Hi, Heather. I'm excited to have you here today.
Hello.
So, as always with my interviews, we just jump right into the good stuff. So, let's get started with my first question, which was, what was going on in your life before all of this stuff hit?
Well, that's a funny question and kind of hard to answer because one of the symptoms of Lyme disease, especially neuro Lyme, is memory loss.
Oh,
So a lot of my life before it happened is completely gone.
just gone.
So that's a good question. Yeah, just gone. I don't remember a whole lot. I mean, I'm pretty sure I was bitten and infected when I was 13. I don't remember much before the age of 19, 20.
Okay. And I had someone else who was dealing with Lyme disease say she wasn't exactly sure where she got it either. And I think that that's a real commonality. So, talk to me a little bit about how it was discovered and what that journey's been like.
Oh, I remember when I got bit, but we didn't know that I had Lyme disease. I got bit
Oh,
when
okay.
I was 13, and I found the tick on my belly and freaked out because it was gross. And I was a teenage girl living in Missouri. My mom, I found out, took it out the wrong way. She took it out the old-fashioned way, where you take a lighter to it
Mhm.
and it's supposed to release. But then we found out that when you do that, it actually makes it scared and it vomits.
Uh-oh, it looks like the video froze.
Anything because of the way that you took it out. Fast forward, what? Are you there?
Yep, you froze for just a moment, but I have you back now. Nope, it froze again. Uh,
Front row.
okay,
There you are.
I see you again.
I see you again as well.
Okay, so the last thing I heard is that mom used a lighter to get it to come out, and instead that made it vomit. That's disgusting.
Correct. It is disgusting. So yeah, there's actually a particular way you're supposed to take out ticks in order to lessen your chances of getting Lyme disease. So that's the wrong way of doing it.
Okay.
But then fast forward 20 some years. So yeah, I was bit when I was 13. I didn't get diagnosed until I was 34, 35. So a really, really long time being very sick with no answers.
How did you find the answer? What finally was the turning point?
A girlfriend of mine who had been wanting me to see one of her practitioner friends for quite some time, I finally took her up on it. And I was literally in the office with this woman for 5 minutes, and I can't remember where she was from, but she had a really cool accent. And she's like, I know exactly what's wrong with you. And her eye kind of twinkled, and I was like, yeah, right, whatever. I've been talking to you for 5 minutes. I've been looking for answers my whole life, but you've got the answers. Okay. And she's like, you have Lyme disease. And asked me if I had ever been bit by a tick. And I was like, yeah, actually, back when I was 13. And that was all she wrote.
So tell me a little bit about the symptoms and what were you experiencing? And I know that when we talked before, you told me that you really did a lot of research and had to be your own advocate. Tell me more about that journey, what that entailed.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I started off going the Western medicine route, which was a lot of antibiotics, anti-malarial drugs. I actually thought that I was going to die from the treatment more so than the disease. And that's kind of what sparked me to become a functional diagnostic nutritionist practitioner. Um, to be my own health advocate, because I knew that if I was going to come out of this, I couldn't keep going the route that I was going. Symptoms, they call it the great imitator. They say like 50% of fibromyalgia is misdiagnosed Lyme. They say 60% of MS is actually misdiagnosed Lyme. Chronic fatigue, hormonal disruption, gut dysfunction, cognitive neuro issues, the great imitator, you name it. And that can be a symptom. Every person's journey is different and looks different. And that's part of the reason why it's so hard to diagnose.
And is there a certain test that is definitive, or how are people diagnosed?
No, I wish. I mean, typical Western blot is what they do, and that's looking for antibodies. Now, see, this little creature, what it does is it'll actually shut down your immune system. So this test is looking for the antibodies in your immune system. And if you've had it in your system as long as I have, those antibodies are done. They're non-existent. So when you go to test for it, it's not going to show up on the test. I ended up having something done called live blood analysis, and that was kind of, I could see it on the screen. Um, there were some other markers, some other tests that I got done. I know IGeneX has a pretty good Lyme panel out right now. So there are different companies coming out with different stuff, but sadly, it's still pretty underground and pretty hard to diagnose, especially to get insurance to pay for it.
Hmm. And that again is something that I've heard others experiencing, having a hard time with getting treatment, getting covered, finding the right thing to help. The diagnosis is just really the beginning. So what have you found to help you begin to heal?
That's like a 4-hour interview. I mean, we started off with diet and lifestyle, number one. Um, a lot of detoxing. Coffee enemas became one of my best friends. It helps detox the liver, it helps detox the blood. Um, if they were curing cancer, Dr. Gershon back in the 1930s with juice fasting and coffee enemas. So love coffee enemas. Frequency, Rife technology, geez, silver, herbs, a special concoction of antibiotics. What else? Ozone therapy. Trying to think of everything that I've
And how
tried.
did you find all these? Is there a big underground layer of Lyme disease specialists?
Uh, no, I kind of had to be a health detective and piece it together myself. Um, the awesome thing is that the truth is right there, like just right below the surface. You don't have to scratch that far. You just gotta want to look for it and find it, dig a little bit, and stuff just starts popping up. And it's like Alice and the White Rabbit. You
Mhm.
start going down the hole with the White Rabbit, and it just leads you to all kinds of different places, which leads you to this, which leads you to that. Like it got deep fast.
Yeah. What do you think you've learned from this experience?
It was life changing. I mean, not only the physical aspects of it, but there's the whole mental emotional aspect of any disease, right? What's it trying to teach you? What do you have to learn from it? So there's been a lot of releasing mental emotional stuff along with healing the physical as well. That's the problem with too many people is they'll hit the physical without even touching the mental emotional aspect of, and every disease has it. Lyme disease likes to what do they correlate it with? Anger, and also liver issues. So what are you angry about? What kind of anger are you holding on to? Are you expressing anger, healthily? Like there's just all these layers to healing, and you can't just focus on the physical.
And is Lyme disease something that stays with you your entire life, or is it something that you can heal and recover from?
You know, I, I get different opinions from different people, different doctors, different schools of thought. The woman I've been working with, who's kept me alive and kept me doing as well as I'm doing, seems to think that, especially because it's been in my system as long as it has, that it's going to be something that's going to be with me for the rest of my life, and that I just kind of, manage symptoms, um, which is fine. I mean, I do 85% better than most people I know with Lyme disease, especially as long as I've had it. So I have to watch my diet. I have to watch, my stress level. I have to watch, I have to be I have to be more careful and more cautious, which kind of sucks sometimes, when I see my other friends having a couple drinks at a party, or they're, eating stuff that they're not supposed to. it makes me sad, but I also know that if I indulge in that, that I'm going to spiral, and I've come too far to go backwards. So
Yeah,
keeps me on track.
good. Um, and all of this from a tick. Like it amazes me sometimes how something so small, literally in this case, can change your entire life.
Well, they call it nature's dirty needle too, because usually you don't only get Lyme disease, you pick up a bunch of little co-infections because it's going around, eating off of different things, and each thing that it eats off of, it's picking up different co-infections, different germs, different, and it's making this wonderful concoction, for the last person, the last thing that it's on, so and there's a bunch of controversy that it was actually genetically engineered to be kind of biological warfare. There's a lot of articles coming out about that right now. So
Interesting.
yeah, right.
So what advice would you give to someone who is struggling and doesn't have a diagnosis?
Struggling and doesn't have a diagnosis?
Yeah.
Well, most folks who don't have a diagnosis, that's an interesting question.
Like, is there a
Uh,
certain thing that they should be asking for? You mentioned kind of some of these panels. Is that the route that you suggest people take, or do they need to dive into the emotional? What might their first step be?
Even as I worked with people as an FDN, first thing I always addressed was diet, period, end of story. I mean, you can't rebuild something on a crappy foundation, so you got to get the right kind of water. You got to be making sure that you're not breathing in toxic air. You got to make sure that the food that you're bringing in is not causing more inflammation and adding to that disease process. So like lifestyle and diet is always, 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 always number one before you even start killing anything off, before you start doing anything. Because like I said, you got to get that foundation strong first. So
Okay,
always looking at diet and lifestyle first.
great. And then once they do have a diagnosis, then we start the healing process again by going back to diet and lifestyle.
Absolutely. We use this program called DRESS: diet, rest, exercise, supplementation, and stress reduction. Um, finding a good support system. The funny thing about having an what do they call it, an invisible disease, is that people like with cancer, they have a shaved head, and people automatically jump into, oh, how can I help you? How can I, do you need a meal? Do you want me to watch your kids? How can I be of service? People with Lyme disease don't look any different than anybody else, so it's it's hard to find people who can understand what you're going through, so finding a good support system and a support group that doesn't get toxic. The very first Lyme disease support group I walked into was actually pretty darn gnarly, and I was like, oh my god, nobody's going to heal in this environment. So you got to be really careful, but there's so many amazing things out there right now, especially on the internet, and connecting with people who know what it is that you're going through.
What made that group so toxic?
It was, oh my gosh, the leader was victim, victim, victim. I'm gonna die. I'm scared. I'm trying to remember. I mean, this was years ago, but it wasn't. It's one thing to talk about your experience, and it was another thing to completely relive it over and over and over. You know what I mean? It was like a dog with a bone. Like, I've noticed some people with chronic illnesses, they wear that diagnosis like a comfort blanket. And I also know that if you're ever going to get better, you can't continue to identify with the disease. Period. End of story. So as long as they stay wrapped up in the sickness, they're going to stay sick. And that's kind of what they were doing. It's hard to explain right now because, like I said, that was like 7 years ago. But I mean, I left with that within a half an hour. crying, one, because I thought I was going to die. There was no hope. I mean, it was just toxic.
Yeah, I get that. In another interview I did, the woman was diagnosed with cancer, and she felt the same way, that she just wore it and there was no hope in it. And so I think that you're reiterating that with chronic illness. We can wear that as a label, and it can define us rather than us defining, how what we're going to do with it, or how we want to go forward with it or be defined. So, all right. I'm trying to think of which question I want to ask.
Oh, there you are.
Or, um, so knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self about Lyme disease or about the experience?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I saw that question on your lineup, and I didn't touch it. And it was because at the time I was like, this doesn't compute. Because, it's twofold. Like, I have lost like close to 20 some years of my life in and out of the site. If you freeze, if you can still hear me. There you are. So you froze there for a bit. Could you hear me at all, or?
No, I got that for a long time you were in and out, maybe. I wasn't sure what you said.
Right. Sorry. In and out of psych wards, misdiagnosed on different medications. Exhausted, psychotic. I mean, a mess, a total mess. There were a lot of gifts that came out of this disease, but at the same time, I don't know. Part of me would say yes. I would say get on antibiotics immediately after being bit, regardless of whether you show up with a bullseye rash or not, because that only happens in 30% of the population gets that bullseye rash. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that, because it's bittersweet. It's
Yeah.
taught me a lot, but at the same time, it's been miserable.
Yeah.
I
think a lot of challenges.
Faith.
Yeah, I think a lot of challenges in life are that way. It's like
Right.
we need to get to a point where we have gratitude for it, and sometimes that's hard because it sucks.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I absolutely agree with that. Do you have anything else you want to say before I ask you my random question?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. If you had a magic wand right now, what would you do with it?
What I do with it? Like, do I get like many wishes, or is it just like a one-time pass?
It's yours to
It's
do whatever you want with it. It's magical.
fantastic. Well, first and foremost, I have a kiddo who's got some mental emotional issues right now, so I'd probably wave that over him and make him feel more comfortable in his skin. He's also transgendered and he's having some issues. Obviously, heal myself. The funny thing about chronic illness is it makes you kind of broke, because you're always, spending money on things. So it would be nice to have some extra cash. World peace, of course. Poverty gone. I'm pretty easy, low maintenance. I just want to feel better and have a little extra coin in my pocket and have people smiling and happy and loving each other.
Yeah. All that and world peace.
And world peace. Did you ever see that movie, Miss Congeniality?
Yes.
No matter what they answered, it was, and
world peace. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Heather, so much for sharing your story with us, sharing a bit of your journey. I'll put your contact information in the video notes so that anyone who wants to reach out to you can. Maybe they're struggling and you can give them some hope. Maybe they have Lyme disease or maybe they don't and they want to talk to you more about this whole idea of looking at their diet and their lifestyle and learning from what you've already gone through. I am a big advocate of letting someone else's learnings and mistakes shorten our time to have to do the same. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Why reinvent the wheel?
exactly. So thank you again so much. And
Thank you.
I wish you all those things and world peace.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.